here for prosperity. He's the man. This guy, like this guy. Come on, take a few minutes, brother.
Well, good morning, fellow freedom fighters. Thank you all for coming out. We started this Spending Revolt tour a few months ago, and we were trying to think of what place symbolizes the stuff that's going on right now in Washington, D.C., better than anywhere else. So I don't know if you agree or not, but we picked San Francisco, California, the home of Nancy Pelosi. We pulled this bus in, and I'm just going to say the crowd there wasn't quite as friendly as you guys are. Let me just throw it out there. But we found a lot friendlier places over the last several months of this Spending Revolt tour. And that's exactly what's happening across this country, a Spending Revolt. When I look at and by the way, I know you're excited. I just saw the news. I picked up my paper in the USA Today in the hotel the other day. And Herman, you may not have known this, because you're not behind the times, I guess. According to DC and the president and all these economists, the recession is over. Don't you feel better already? I feel better as an American that we have unemployment right at 10%. We have a deficit at $1.4 trillion this year. And we have a country that's hurting. Folks are hurting. But thankfully, the president and his friends have decided that the recession is over conveniently 40 days before an election. They decided that. So we're really happy about that. But in 40 days, Americans will go to the polls. And we hope you'll do that and do really your duty as an American citizen, and that's to go vote. And we just want to make sure the goal of this Spending Revolt effort is to make sure that as Americans go to the polls on November 2nd, or early voting takes place across the country. I know Florida has early voting as well. We want to make sure the number one issue on the mind of Americans is how big government's getting, how deficits are piling up, how taxes are going to go up at the end of this year if these politicians don't do something. We want to make sure that that threat to our prosperity, to our freedom, to our economic freedoms especially, is the number one issue. Because it is. It's the greatest threat facing us and Americans for Prosperity. The reason we wanted to fund this bus tour and get moving across the country was to make sure we drive home that message. Because I'm telling you, if we don't get government spending and pension reform for these public employees, if we don't get taxes under control, it's going to really end the prosperity we've enjoyed as Americans for so long. You know what's going to happen at the end of December, right? The death tax goes from 0 to 55%. Income taxes go up. And the president loves to say, and the liberal Democrats, probably the congresswoman right here says this, oh, don't worry, we're only going to raise taxes on the rich. It's only the rich. Did you know that over 900,000 small businesses are going to see their taxes go up because of that supposedly tax on the rich that's going to kick back in at the highest level in December? Now, what is the engine that's supposed to drive our economy? Small businesses. And by the way, those over 900,000 small businesses represent 44% of the economic output of small businesses in America. So in effect, it's going to be a tax increase on 44% of the output of small businesses. Folks who are struggling the most. And yet that's a tax on the rich? Are you kidding me? That's what this president and sadly this Congress does. We had two key issues that we've looked at Americans for Prosperity as we judge and try to educate folks on these members of Congress. The first is cap and trade, Al Gore's most cherished dream. And you're familiar with cap and trade, right?
Yeah.
Raising utility costs during these hot Florida summers, jacking up gasoline prices, killing hundreds of thousands of jobs that we can't afford to lose in the name of this global warming ideology that comes out of Washington. That's what cap and trade is about. And your congresswoman, when she had the chance to vote no on it, do you know how she voted? She voted yes on it. She was for that cap and trade tax. And that's a devastating blow if it were to pass. The second issue is health care. And you guys know, Jim Martin, our good friend at 60 Plus, just talked about the health care issue. And you know how your member voted on that, right? No initially, and then they put the squeeze on her. Nancy Pelosi said, look, it's time to put party first. It's time to put our agenda first over those folks back home. The heck with them. Our agenda is more important. And she flipped her vote. And that's what we're facing, and that's what we want to make sure we tell every last citizen about. Let's make sure that folks know how these politicians vote. And look, you mentioned this. This is not partisan. It's not about any one party. Because I'll tell you this, come January 1, no matter who's in charge in the House of Representatives, we're going to demand a few things, right? We're going to demand, number one, a vote up or down on repealing this healthcare takeover. Up or down, no matter who's in charge. Absolutely we are. And in all candor, we know that President Obama would veto that if it passed, so here's what we're going to do. Spending bills originate in which chamber? The House of Representatives. That's exactly right. We're going to go to the House if it's a Republican majority or a Democrat majority, but if it's a Republican majority especially, we're going to say, okay guys, you campaigned on a spending restraint. Let's now take individual chunks of this health care bill and defund it from day one. Let's make sure those new IRS agents, they want to hire the thousands of new IRS tax collectors on our dime to go enforce that mandate that we shouldn't have, that's unconstitutional. Let's make sure we defund them from day one. And let's make sure we hold them to that. And we can do that, by the way. So that's what this effort is about. April Marie, it's good to be in your home, in your neck of the woods. And thank you for what you're doing with AFP here. You know, the president on Monday night, he's been attacking Americans for Prosperity. You may have seen his statements out there. On Monday night, he was at a campaign and he said, a campaign stop in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He said, yeah, there are these groups out there. There are these groups. I think he means you too, Jim, at 60 plus. And there are these groups out there. And one of the groups is called Americans for Prosperity. We don't know who they are. We don't know who they are. They could be controlled by foreign corporate interest. And we just said to the president, look, come on the road with us and meet these foreign controlled interests. Meet you guys. You look pretty dangerous. I tell you, as I look around this covered shelter today. But the left wants to demonize. They want to attack us. But they're losing, not because they're not nice folks. They may or may not be. I don't know them that well. They're losing because of their big government, big spending, freedom-taking agenda. And that's why the country's turned against them. That's why President Obama is at 41% approval. Not because he's not a nice guy, but because his agenda is wrong for America. Nancy Pelosi, I'm not sure she is a nice person now that I think about it, but she's failing and she has the lowest numbers for a speaker in decades. Why? Because her agenda is wrong for the country. And it's a challenge to our freedom. And you know, when Americans face a challenge, they get up and fight. And that's exactly what you've done over the last couple of years, and that's exactly what we're doing now with this tour. And if we keep at it, if we keep fighting, we're going to win for our freedoms. Thank you for what you're doing.
Don't forget, we have things over here. We're spending Revolt.